Okay. Shalom Uvracha, everybody. Thank you for joining us as we jump back into our limud, our learning of Sichos HaRan. And I hope everybody had an amazing Purim. We are going to jump into our teachings, and I'm going to share my screen so we can share them together. Okay. Excellent. So we jump into Sichos HaRan Kuf Lamed. And this is a particularly interesting Sichah teaching from Rebbe Nachman, where he's talking about something that was very relevant then and prevalent, we should say more accurately, which were tzaddikim who were performing miracles. And today also there are tzaddikim that are performing miracles, but back then it was very, very, very common and rampant. And this was what people were talking about and working through. I think we learned recently that really it wasn't Rebbe Nachman's way so much, and we're going to be learning about that now today as well, to be a miracle worker. That wasn't what Rebbe Nachman was known for. His Hasidim didn't tell over the miracle stories that they experienced with him. Reb Nosson was quoted as saying that we were the greatest miracles. I think we may have learned that even together. Reb Nosson says there was no greater miracle than the fact that he was able to bring people close to Hashem who on the surface were distant, and that's a miracle that Rebbe Nachman did and does and will continue to do until Mashiach comes. So Eish Shali, he said, my fire will burn. Tukad ad bias HaMashiach, will burn until Mashiach comes. So over here Rebbe Nachman is commenting on the other kinds of tzaddikim who were primarily known for the wonders that they were bringing about. And he says over here, Le'inyanam for samim bali moifis, with regard to those very famous, almost like celebrity tzaddikim in a way, Bali Moifis, who were busy all the time doing miracles, wonders, incredible, miraculous blessings that were coming to their followers on their account. Sipur Maisa, Rebbe Nachman told a story. He said, Shemelech echad hoyle shnei banim. There was a king who had two children. Echad hoye chacham, echad shoita. One of these children was wise, and one of the children was a shoita, was a fool. Va'asas ha-shoita memuna alay tzares. Now, he may have been a fool, but he was still the prince. So, of course, he's going to get a very prestigious position in the royal government. And so the shaita, the foolish son, became a commander who was in charge of the Oitzaris, the treasurer. He was in charge of all the treasure houses of the king. And the wise one didn't have any official position. He didn't have any role. He sat next to the king constantly. He was constantly by the king. They didn't have an official position in the cabinet, in the government, in the royal advisors or anything like that. He just sat next to the king the whole time. And it was so difficult for people to understand. This son, the prince, who is not a wise person, is a fool. He has such an important role. He's the treasurer. And everybody comes, and obviously he's not just allowing people to take of the treasures of the king, but if they're deserving to have, so they bring their receipt, and he's the one who's giving them the treasures, or lachnis, or taking in if somebody wants to donate, or something. The king wins a war and they conquer a lot of spoils. He's the one who's overseeing the money that goes in and the money that goes out. So people saw that this foolish the foolish son, the foolish prince, has this incredible position of power and influence. And the wise son doesn't seem to have any position at all. All he does the whole day is sit next to the king. So the king answered them, is this what you consider to be important? This is really a prestigious position, that he takes money that's already there, meaning treasures that have already been amassed, and he's in charge of giving them out. Like, that's a big chachma. The money's already there. Sachakol, his whole job is transportation. He takes money from here and he puts it there. He takes money from there and he puts it here. But the money's there already. So the king said, that's the prince who's the shait of the fool, who is in charge of the treasury. But the wise son, he might not have an official position. He might not be recognized by everybody in terms of what he's really doing. But the prince who is wise is my closest advisor. He sits next to me, and he's contemplating deep thoughts, and he's coming up with all kinds of new strategies that the king said, I couldn't even come up with these things on my own. And he's the one who's advising me and guiding me. Like the Eloah Eitzos, and it's through these concepts and this advice that ani koivish medinos. Then I'm conquering different countries that I wouldn't have even known existed. And that's where all the money comes from. And so this son, who's the foolish son, who's in charge of the treasury, who's making sure the money that comes in and the money that goes out, but that's money that's only there because of the wise son. That the wise son is really the one who's sitting next to the father and is coming up with all of the plans in the first place to enable the treasury to be filled, to be able to keep those treasures stocked. But the treasurer, his whole job is just to take money that's already there and to give them out. Al Kain, therefore, and the parable concludes without the nimshal, but we'll speak it out, but it should be obvious. Al Kain, therefore, certainly the role and the position of the wise son is much greater than the role of the treasurer son, who is the foolish prince. Even though on the outside it looks like he doesn't have a fancy position, doesn't seem as popular, doesn't seem as in vogue, doesn't seem as prestigious, but you have to know because he's the source for all the itzaros. He's the one who's actually making things happen. And the chacham, and the shoita, rather, the foolish prince who became the treasurer, his whole thing is just transportation. And the nimshal, of course, is, Rebbe Nachman was talking about the different kinds of tzaddikim. There are some tzaddikim that are doing miracles left and right. And again, I'm not speaking about any tzaddik in particular, and it might not even be relevant in our day and age. Speaking about what was then. And there are tzaddikim that are sparkling. Everything is very flashy. And they have tons of followers, and whether it's, today, in terms of the way Hasidim are measured as like YouTube views or channel subscribers or whatever it is, there are people who are very, very popular. And then there are others who you don't see anything by them. And because Olam Hafach Ra'isi, because the whole world is flipped upside down, sometimes you can find, and it is true today, sometimes you can find that some of the most popular lecturers are just recycling material. They just go around and they're collecting this story from this one and that thing from here, and you shine it up and you present it. Okay, that's beautiful and it's entertaining, but you can't compare that to the origination of people who are actually thinking and digging deep and almost sort of discovering those well springs to begin with. Today we live in what's called the Dar Malaktim. So we live in a generation of collectors. Likute basar likute. Right? Those who are collecting after those who came and collected and collected and collected. And so today, you can give a shiur, and in the shiur you quote a Reb Nachman, and you quote a Balatanya, and you quote a Berditchever, and you quote a Svasemas, and you quote a Sam Sofer, and you quote, and so on and so on and so forth. And you put together a spectacular presentation of sources. Now in Rabbi Nachman, in and of himself, on this particular sugya, he only said the one thing he said. But you had 20 things to say, because you went and collected from this one, and from that one, and from the other one. Not you. I'm describing some imaginary person, or probably myself, let's say. Right? So who is the chacham and who is the shaita? You understand, relatively speaking, nobody's a shaita. But who's the real chacham? The one who went and collected all the sources from Sefaria, and he did a little Googling in ChatGPT, and he put together a whole source sheet? Or Rebbe Nachman and the Balatanya and the others who originated these concepts, right? Who dug the wells and allowed those well springs to bubble forth. That's the real work, because anybody can go online and you can find some witty, some witticism usually from Christian source. And then you can swap out, J for Hashem, and all of a sudden it's, wow, what a deep line, You can put it on a graphic with your name underneath, you can put it on social media and you have thousands of likes. This is not where it's at. This is the shaitos, just giving out the treasures. Rebbe Nachman says with our real leaders, our real educators, that they're drawing from the depth. They're coming up with new systems. They're coming up, they are originating. And the things that they say will become the quotes, for others to then come and include them in their source sheets. But they are the wise prince who's mechalik. I'll just bring you something else that's coming into my mind. Is Rabbi Nachman, we learned it together. Some of the Chevra are learning Likutei Moharan in the mornings. And I was going to make a comment before that I'm sitting in the same place. And before it was very cloudy, I was going to say we're back to regular scheduled programming here in England. It's like a cloudy day, and then I started giving the shiur, and the sun came out. So a little bit of Rebbe Nachman, sun starts shining. So Rebbe Nachman, for those who were learning with us in Likutei Moharan, we learned in Torah Tes, and Rebbe Nachman also brings this in Torah Kuf Yud Beis, the concept of his remez for what HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Noach, Tzohar Tasa L'Teva. Right? If some of the Chevra were learning with us, you'll remember this. Where Hashem says to Noach, make a light for the Teva, a Tzohar, a shining light. And Rashi tells us, Yesh Aimrim from Chazal, there are those opinions who say that light was Even Toiv, was a precious stone. And Yesh Aimrim Chaloin, there are others who say that light was actually just a window in the Teva that allowed the light to come in. Different shitas. So Rebbe Nachman has a remez, and Rebbe Nachman says the Teva doesn't just mean the ark, but from the Baal Shem Tov, his great-grandfather, Teva means a word of Torah. So about these words of Torah, about the Teva, the pasuk says, Tzohar Tasa L'Teva. We should try to make sure that our words of Torah shine, that they're lichtig, they illuminate. But according to Chazal, and Rashi brings it in a very particular way of speaking, and every word is Ruach HaKodesh, so you can really learn the remez and the drush and the sod in Rashi, as Rebbe Nachman frequently does. And the interiority of this concept of making that our words of Torah and Tefillah should shine is two kinds of shining. Yesh Oimrim Even Toiv. There are some whose words shine fundamentally, and they're essentially light sources. They are the origin of the light. They're the source. And that's Yesh Oimrim. There are some tzaddikim whose words are the source. There's an Even Toiv. It's a light source. Yesh Oimrim, but there are other kinds of sharing Torah. It's very beautiful, but it's a chalon. It's just a window. It just takes light from somewhere else and it allows it in. But it isn't the light source in and of itself. And a person has to know. Listen to Rabbanim, listen to teachers. Again, there's nothing wrong with a person who's taking content from somewhere else, but is it coming from the ma'amakim? Is this coming from a source? From the source of that person's neshama, where the person's worked through their own stuff and the person's come through, come to their own unique perspective, or is it just what I like to call, almost entertainment value? And it's holy entertainment. There's much worse entertainment. Holy entertainment, but it's entertainment. It isn't. You understand? It isn't coming from the source. And over here, Rebbe Nachman is speaking about this in the context of the moifsim, of the miracles and the wonders that there are some tzaddikim. They're doing all the miracles, but what's the big deal? They're just handing out treasures that were really brought down into the world through the real chachamim. And Rebbe Nachman is learning over here, and he says it's like a radical thing if you plug it back into the nimshal. But in the mashal, the king is saying that this chacham is able to give me advice that are eitzas chadashas she'eni yachal lavei aleihem. Advice that I never would have been able to figure out on my own, which is shocking in the context of the nimshal being Hashem and the tzaddik. And somehow the tzaddikim have such a role by Hashem, where Tenu Oiz Lelikim Yisrael Mefarnus in Lavim Shabashamayim, Klal Yisrael support Hashem in some sense. This idea of Avodah L'Tzarech Gavoya, that somehow we're supporting HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The tzaddik is giving advice to HaKadosh Baruch Hu how to run the world. An unbelievable thing. Tzaddik Moishel B'Yer Selikim. Hashem gave the tzaddikim memshala, and they are sitting by HaKadosh Baruch Hu and advising him kiviyachol. Unbelievable. Okay, so that's Sichos HaRan Kuf Lamed. There's a related teaching in Chaim Aran Taf Nun Hey, which I wanted to learn together with you. It's a similar concept, just a slightly different, brings that out in a slightly different way, and it's a very important mashal, because I think it could be applied more broadly than just this context. And he says, with regard to those leaders that aren't real leaders, they are just on the surface. They look like they're big leaders and have big followings, but they're not real manhigim. They're not authentic leaders. The Rebbe Nachman said existed at that time. Sometimes they get so stuck in their delusion where they think that they actually accomplish something, spiritually speaking. From the standpoint of giving brachas, making moifsim, miracles, they can delude themselves to think that they actually caused it. For example, somebody comes to the tzaddik and the person nebuch is suffering, either can't bring children into the world, or he's having trouble raising his children. And then the tzaddik gives a bracha, right? This mefursim shal sheker, this leader was a non-leader. It was not authentic. He was manipulating people. And he goes and he gives the bracha, and oh my goodness, 9 months later, this couple has a child. And what he asked is fulfilled. So of course, so they start to think they did it. They start to fall into their own delusion to actually think that they're the ones that caused that this couple should have a baby. Says Rebbe Nachman, let me tell you something. Amar Mashal, he said a parable, a very painful, but Rebbe Nachman was very sharp sometimes, very sharp, very direct parable. Amar Mashal, he said a parable, there's a person who's walking in the forest, and a wolf attacks him. And he's freaking out. There's a wolf that's threatening him in the middle of the forest. He's all alone. What should he do? See, he's walking with a stick, a walking staff. He holds up the stick like a rifle, pointed at the animal. Kilu writes a liris as a ave and makle, right? Like he's going to shoot the wolf. Whatever it is, the wolf with his stick. So obviously he can't, but he's pretending. So the wolf should run away. And all of a sudden he's holding up his stick, right? And he's pretending like he's going to shoot the wolf. And there's somebody's a sniper, is a sharpshooter, is hunting wolves, is on the other side of the forest, and he pulls the trigger and he kills the wolf. And he kills the wolf. And this fool who's holding the stick thinks that he killed the wolf with his walking stick. He doesn't understand that someone else shot it. Someone else shot him. Someone else killed this thing. It's not you with the walking stick. You can't kill a wolf with a walking stick. Everybody knows that with a cane. Says Rebbe Nachman, it's the same exact thing here. There are true tzaddikim b'chol dar v'dar in every generational era. They're the ones who are bringing about all the brachas and all of the pekidas and all of the yeshuas. Every salvation is coming down to the world through them. And every remembrance, so to speak, on behalf of God, to bring down into a person's life good things. Everything, hakol al yada. They're the ones who are doing it. And they think that they were the ones that did it. Crazy thing. And again, we'll bring it back not just from the standpoint of miracles, but from the standpoint of teaching. There's such a humility. Like, for example, myself, right? I spend my whole time teaching other people's Torah, right? I'm teaching Rebbe Nachman's Torah. How crazy if I'm going to become arrogant over the Torah that I'm teaching that isn't mine, b'chlal. So to pretend like it's, like all of a sudden, like it's my Torah. It's not my Torah. I have nothing. I'm just teaching the tzaddik's Torah. I'm just like a hollow little pipe. And it comes down through my own neshama, and so I have, it comes down into its own nuanced, reflection in my own heart and mind. That's true. But it's all coming from the tzaddik. Every word is not me. It's not my, I'm not passionate about my Torah. I'm just sharing the Torah of the tzaddik. So whatever I am able to accomplish and people get inspiration from what I'm teaching, it's not me. It's not my teaching. That I'm just with a cane. That tzaddik is busy. So anytime anybody thanks me, don't thank me. We'll stand together and we'll thank that Hashem for giving tzaddikim in the world. Don't feel, you don't have to thank me. And if anybody wants to, repay because of this that they gain from the shiur, the only thing they can do is share it forward. Share it to someone else. That's the only reward that I'll accept. Share it to someone else. Because it's all of ours, because it's none of ours, because it's his, with a lowercase h, which is Rebbe Nachman, and it's his with an uppercase h, Lavdil, which is the Ein Sof. They're the ones with the weapons. We're just standing here with canes. It's all them. They're the ones who are doing everything. And this that others think, whatever they think, and over thousands and thousands of views and chassidim and millions of things, this is an upside down world. That's not how you measure success. That's not how you measure value. There's quality and there's quantity, and very rarely do those two things meet. Usually the more quantity something has, the less quality it has. But the more quality something has, the truer it is, the deeper the impact, the deeper the transformation, and it's different, and it's not entertainment. It's not even education, it's transformation. So it might be fewer people, but really this is the revelation, like Rabbi Nachman was. He never had a big following, tiny following. Toward the end of his life, at the peak, he had 800 chassidim. Teeny. It was less than 1,000 chassidim. It's a joke. The other tzaddikim had tens and tens, and maybe in some cases hundreds of thousands. 800 chassidim is a tiny little community. Tiny. Even by today's standards, there are shuls, that have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families. Rebbe Nachman of Breslov, but he was a makar mayim chayim. You understand, he wasn't a pitcher taking water from one place to the next. He was the nachal novea makar chachma. He opened up well springs that the whole Klal Yisrael would draw on, and nothing's even begun with this tzaddik yet, but it is starting to happen, and it will continue to happen, and will continue to unfold as more and more people begin to wrap their head around this strange fluke of Jewish history, which isn't a fluke. From our perspective, it's a fluke, but this strange hanaga that, Rebbe Nachman is the tzaddik emes. Yeah. And his Torah contains all the answers that we need. It's true. It's strange, bizarre. It sounds unlikely, it sounds unreasonable, but the facts speak for themselves. This is what is speaking to our generation. And everything else that we have, with all of the prestigious positions and this and that, is failing in one way or another. At least in relation to where we could be from the standpoint of health and connectivity and achdus, and so failing. This is not it. Everybody knows that. And over here you have the Rebbe Nachman and his simple messages, his humble messages. His humble pieces of advice are changing people's lives. And like I've said in the past, if this wasn't happening, I'd be totally delusional, and you should, just spend your time, in more worthwhile ways. But I'm telling you facts. I'm telling you a fact. This is what I do full time. I see this is what works. This is what speaks to people. This is what people are finding relevant. Once you cleanse it from all the baggage that Breslov has accumulated over the last, 200 or so years, and you cleanse it, and you're able to give it just the nakuda without any of the other stuff. This is everything that people are looking for. Everything. It's an upside-down world. I can't explain it. Yosef HaTzadik was also, harassed by his brothers and thrown into a pit and maligned and degraded. Can't explain it. This is how Hashem runs the world. But this is the difference between the Ben Shaita and the Ben Chacham. Okay, that's Sichos HaRan Kuf Lamed. Here we come to Kuf Lamed Aleph, and here we enter into a brand new realm of Sichos HaRan, where now we're going to be learning the backstory for many of Rebbe Nachman's teachings in Likutei Moharan. In order to fully appreciate this part of the Sefer, a person has to have some familiarity with the lessons, which many of us don't, and that's totally okay. But just to say, it's a lot more meaningful when you know what's being referenced. But Torah hi v'lilmad ani tzarich. This is where we're up to in the Sefer, and I'll do my best to provide a little bit of background and context from the lessons themselves, but we're really, because otherwise we'd have to learn every Torah in Likutei Moharan that is being referenced here, which it's not our subject. So we'll try to make it through as directly as we can, but with a little bit of background. So Reb Nosson begins. He says, let me just give you a little bit of background. Okay, the little bit of background is, for anybody who's been following our Sichos HaRan series, you know that this happens to us all the time, that around a particular yontiv or a particular parsha, we're always bumping into the Torah or the Sichah that's relevant to that subject. This has happened probably tens of times now. So, if you've been following the Likutei Moharan series, which was maybe even more shocking, so we started this a few months ago, with no cheshbon, no calculation of where we'd be when, zero. And not only that, but there were days that because of things that came up, whatever it was, I had just come back from a trip to Eretz Yisrael, and I thought that I was going to have shiur on that day. We said there's no shiur on that day. We started shiur the next day, and then a trip came up that was, again, it was not planned so far in advance. I went to Miami. I was there for a couple of days without rhyme or reason. We were just flowing along where we up to. And again, just the hashgacha of Hashem, and to see Hashem's miracles and to recognize them. 2 days before Purim, we arrived at the banks of Torah Yud, the 10th lesson in Likutei Moharan, which is unequivocally the lesson on Purim in the entire Sefer, the Purim lesson, 2 days before Purim. On Tanis Esther, we sat there learning about Mordechai and Esther. And the Chaver voted that we should have shiur on Purim morning. We sat on Purim morning learning perhaps the most Purim-oriented paragraph in the entire Sefer. Purim morning. I mean, unbelievable. And here we are, the Monday following Purim, without any planning. You know that we don't plan. Some weeks I could give the shiur, some weeks I can't give the shiur. Zero planning in advance. And we should happen upon. We should be guided toward this moment, mamish, of Sichos HaRan Kuf Lamed Aleph, which is Reb Nosson giving the backstory to the 10th lesson in Likutei Moharan, which is the Purim Torah, right after Shushan Purim. It's wild. And especially since in this section, he should have started with Torah Aleph or Torah Beis. No, boom, Torah Yud. Just for us. What a privilege to see it and to taste it and to feel it. We're being guided. So here he says, when I recorded that teaching of Ve'ela Mishpatim, HaMaschelas, which begins with the words, when there are judgments and decrees against Klal Yisrael, whether collectively or individually, through dancing and clapping, all the judgments are sweetened. And that's the way that the teaching begins. And anybody who learned that lesson, if the Chaver have been following along with our series on Likutei Moharan, which is highly encouraged because it's just something very, very special if you've been following, B'chazdei Hashem. So we just finished Torah Yud today. Just today we finished that lesson that I mentioned, that we've been learning for a few days. If you learned that, you know that dancing doesn't mean dancing in this Torah, clapping doesn't mean clapping. Where dancing is what's called Hisgalus HaRaglayim. It's the revelation of the feet, which is the cleansing of arrogance that comes from the feet, and the infusion of humility that comes from connecting to the tzaddik. And the Yadayim is also very, very deep theoretical theological, philosophical, spiritual concepts. And that's really what it means, at least on the surface, right? Beyond the surface of just looking at the actual words, right? But when you learn it, then you say, oh, that's what dancing means, that's what clapping means. But Amar Li, Reb Nosson says, I want to let you know that Rebbe Nachman said to me, after revealing that lesson, after he had written that lesson, Rebbe Nachman said, Kach amarti. This is what I said. Because now there are going to be chas v'shalom decrees coming against the Jewish nation. And the days of Purim are coming, because this lesson was taught right before Purim. And Jews will do a lot of dancing and a lot of clapping. And through the dancing and the clapping, all the judgments will be nullified on Klal Yisrael. And he kept on saying, Kach amarti, watch, this is what I said. Kach amarti, this is what I revealed. And says Reb Nosson, Rebbe Nachman intended to inspire and to awaken our hearts, that we should know and understand that each and every word in his holy words, in his holy sefer, and his holy Torah, even though it has the deepest meaning. The razan ilain, an elevated, lofty, the deepest secrets of creation. Every word is oceans and oceans of the deepest and the widest and the broadest and the most exalted secrets of Torah. Every word. Still, afal pikein, ikar kavanasai shenishba v'nekabel devar v'akdoshim b'pshitos. At the same time, Rebbe Nachman wanted that we should accept and understand and listen and interpret his words with simplicity. Lishmar v'lasais ulekayim es kol divrei Torah b'pshitos ub'tmimos. To fulfill his words, even though on a certain level they're very deep and they mean much more than what they seem to mean on the surface. True, there's no question about that, but it also means just to dance and clap. And that somehow just the simple act of dancing and clapping is itself reflecting these deeper energies, even if a person is not conscious of it. Now, I'm going to add all the more so if a person is conscious of it. And we have the same idea, the chaver that we're learning with us, Torah Ches. Rebbe Nachman speaks about breathing, sighing, breath work. And then he reveals all the spiritual depth behind the concept of breath and and all the deepest secrets of the ruach tzvaynis that's blowing on the strings of David HaMelech's harp and what that is, and the ruach. True. But also just breathing. Now, when a person breathes consciously, that as they're doing this experience of breathing, they're thinking consciously about all these deeper meanings, it's that much more precious. And the same is true for the dancing and the clapping. But Rebbe Nachman wanted us to know that it was just, he meant it on the simplest level. For example, Torah HaKadosh Hazos, this holy Torah revelation, Torah Yud and Likutim are on the 10th lesson. Shenamar Sham, where it says over there, that through dancing and clapping, all of the harsh judgments on Klal Yisrael are sweetened. Says Reb Nosson, again, don't make the mistake of thinking that it just means this deep, meditative, contemplative, Kabbalistic thing. He just meant it in the most straightforward way. That a Jew should strengthen themselves to be besimcha in a time of joy, Purim, v'Chanukah, v'Yamim Tovim, and all the holidays. We're coming up to Pesach now, a chasana, or a wedding, any time that there's an excuse, and even if there's no excuse, you can make an excuse, and you can just turn on some good music, and you can dance, and you can clap for no reason at all. For no reason. I know the world will think we're crazy, right? By the world's standards, if anybody should happen to walk past your kitchen window on a Wednesday afternoon and see you dancing around and clapping, you are loony. You're gone. And I say it's the opposite. They are the crazy ones. Because what is more sane in this world than dancing and clapping for no reason, for every reason. Ashreinu ma toiv chalkeinu. That's one of the things that I always feel when all the chaver, thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people get together in stadiums for a siyum hashas, or for this or for that. It's awesome. Don't get me wrong. It's the most wonderful thing in the world. Why can't we also get hundreds of thousands of people together for no reason other than just to celebrate our Jewishness? Without this pressure of needing to finish something and work with a program and this and that and all the everything involved in that. Let's just get Yidden together and let's just have an evening of celebration. All of us, for no reason. Because there's always a reason. Because we say every morning, Ashreinu ma toiv chalkeinu u'manoim garaleinu. There's so much to be thankful for. There's so many good reasons to dance and clap. There's so many healthy reasons to just dance for no reason. There are so many reasons to dance for no reason, right? There's physical health, there's emotional well-being, there's the humility, there's the simplicity. Oh my goodness, it's the sanest thing you can do, right? Rebbe Nachman told his Hasidim, he said, you know what we're comparable to? He said, we are compared to a group of people who's dancing, and everybody thinks that we're totally crazy, but that's only because they can't hear the music. We could hear the music. And he says, one day we'll all be able to hear the music and dance to it. But now, only we are hearing the music, apparently. Because everybody else thinks we're crazy. And we are dancing to a tune that they cannot hear. They cannot hear. So Rabbi Nachman meant it in the most literal sense. Dance and clap. We should strengthen ourselves with tremendous joy. Where a person will be moved to dance and to clap. And through this, all the judgments are sweetened. And if you know that lesson over there, it's really, and this is why it's true both on the Kabbalistic Hasidus level and also on the physical, practical level, because it all has to do with humility. How much self-importance do we have that we can't dance? We can't be seen dancing. What would this person think of me? It's all gaiva. And gaiva causes charon af in a person's life. Rebbe Nachman says. Because gaiva is avodah zarah, and calls man sheish avodah zarah ba'olam charon af ba'olam. When there's avodah zarah in the world, charon af in the world. When there's avodah zarah ego, meaning in a person's life, chas v'shalom can bring terrible things. And when a person's able to get over themselves, and a person's able to laugh at themselves, and a person's able to just do avodas pshutos, simple things, they're not sophisticated, not impressive, even things that other people would consider weird, whatever it is. This is humility. This is real humility, and that is able to bring about tremendous salvation in a person's life and to sweeten all the judgments. And this is sweetening the judgments. And here Reb Nosson launches into a broader comment on all of Rabbi Nachman's writings. And he says, Ki kol divrei ha-Torah lo b'shamayim hu leimar she'ein mi she'yach liskas l'zalam tekadinim ha'idei amchas kafar yikudim kiyim gedolim b'nei aliyah. None of Rabbi Nachman's words of Torah were in the heavens, right? Meaning inaccessible, or accessible only to the privileged few. Not true. That a person should say, oh, who's the person who's able to sweeten judgments by dancing and clapping? Only big tzaddikim, gedolim, b'nei aliyah. No, says Reb Nosson, Rakal echad mi Yisrael yesh le koyach hazeh. Every single Jew has this power. We overlook our strength. We don't realize how strong we are, how powerful we are. When we fulfill them, these words, in a simple, straightforward, wholesome, wholehearted way. And everything else Rebbe Nachman says in that lesson, and everything that is said in each and every lesson from the Rebbe, because the main thing is not the study of it, the main thing is the doing of it. And here Reb Nosson says, look very carefully, you're going to see this in every single lesson. And focus your heart. Focus your heart. Libcha, not the brain. to focus our heart, lahavin b'chol makayim, to understand in every place, ha'ovdus va'etzos va'hamusar va'hasarus hayoytzim misham al pi pshutin shel dvarim. Simply the practical advice and the guidance, the musar, the chastisement, and the inspiration that emerges from the teachings that we're learning, especially in Likutei Moharan, al pi pshutin shel dvarim, just in the simplest, most straightforward way. And then do, says Reb Nosson, what I did, right? Which Reb Nosson wrote Likutei Tefilos. That's what this is. To daven to Hashem, Hashem, please let me merit this. Open my eyes. Lahavin advarim heitev lamaisa. Help me to fulfill these things. Ki kol dvarav zal kulam nitzrachim umuchrachim leubdas ve'etzas tovas la'avdis bar. Every word that Rebbe Nachman revealed is necessary to serve Hashem. Sometimes people ask me, do you really think Breslov is for everyone? You know, it's not for everyone, right? And my answer to you is, do you really think that Torah is for every Jew? Because it also looks like Torah. It's not for every Jew. And like you'd say, well, of course Torah is for every Jew. It's given for every Jew. Rebbe Nachman is just revealing the innermost kernel of Torah. It is not a fringe sect. It's Rebbe Nachman is pulling away the curtains to reveal the heart and soul of what it means to serve Hashem. Yes, it is for everyone. It is absolutely for everyone. Does that mean that everyone has to become a Breslov or Chassid? No. Rebbe Nachman himself, who said that la'asad lavi, the whole world will be Breslov or Chassidim, and I think that it didn't just mean Jews, I think he meant non-Jews as well, that the ganze Welt sein Breslov or Chassidim, the whole world will be Breslov, didn't mean that they're going to be card-carrying Breslov, whatever this means, that they'll identify with the Breslov establishment. Not. Because he himself says 2 sentences later that what he means by that is leiv basar. Everyone will have a heart of flesh. That's a pasuk Yeshayahu. So you ask me, is leiv basar for everyone? Can't be for everyone. I'm sure it's just for some people. And it's a pasuk Yeshayahu. So it's speaking about the Geula. Yes, Geula is for everyone. Leiv basar, to have a heart that's sensitive and compassionate, is for everyone. To have a relationship with Hashem that's direct and intimate and conscious is for everyone. To serve Hashem every moment, whether a person's in the Beis Medrash or the Beis Knesset, or at work, or a person's with their wives and children and families and friends and eating and sleeping and drinking, is for everyone. Yes, Breslov is for everyone. Mamish for everyone. And that's what Reb Nosson says, Kulam nutzrachim. Yes, they are all necessary for everyone. Umuchrachim le'uvdas ve'etzas tovas la'avdis bar. To serve Hashem properly. They're good advice for everyone. There's no one who cannot benefit from it. The question is a question of presentation. Different people are going to gravitate to different teachers, to different books, to different approaches of presentation, different packaging. But the messages in and of themselves, who doesn't need this? Who doesn't need it? And the people that think that they don't need it, it just goes to show you how deeply they need it, that they don't even know that they need it. But they absolutely need it. Kulam nitzrachim. They're all necessary. Umuchrachim, and they're vital. La'uvdas ve'etzas tovas la'avdis baruch, to serve Hashem. Va'afilu b'ksas mekamas hashel from rihata b'ashkaf rishana emavinim heitavech nagea inin hazel la'uvda l'fi madrigasai. Even if you arrive at a certain teaching where you look at it and there's nothing practical, you can't take anything out from it, says Reb Nosson, it's not true. Afal pikin, even so, be'emes yeshem eitzas neflois v'isayris noira lashavi lavis barach mi makam shu sham. You can look deeper, and there are wondrous pieces of advice, awesome, to enable a person to return to Hashem mi makam shu sham, from wherever you are in life. If you look very deeply, you will certainly find something relevant there for you. Even if it doesn't seem to be directly practical, it's a concept, it's a new thought, it's a new approach. That's also practical, because we are human beings who live in a world where we primarily interact with the world through our actions, sure, but also through our words and also through our thoughts. A thought is a practical thing. Right? People always want to know make it practical. A thought is practical. It's something that's happening in your lived experience. It's practical. And you think a new way, that's going to have its consequences, intended or even unintended, but positive consequences and holy repercussions in a good way, which are going to impact the way that you act. And sometimes it could be non-linear. Can't really draw a direct line from this to that. But a person's perspective changes, things begin to change. There's always something there. If you look very deeply there, you will certainly find something, piece of advice, something that you can take from there to apply to your own situation whenever that is. Because all of Rebbe Nachman's words, him klali is gadol. They are awesomely encompassing. Awesomely encompassing. And every single lesson that Rebbe Nachman revealed is a microcosmic, prismic reflection of the entire Torah. That wherever you sit in Likutei Moharan, you are looking through a window into a whole Torah, but because the window is a certain color, that colors the whole Torah that color. And you move to the next window, see Kala Tarkul from a different perspective, from a different color, and then a different angle, and a different window, and a different... But it's relevant to the way that we approach the entirety of Torah, the whole thing. Umi called B'nai Adam Shaba Olam, called Darga V'Darga. And every lesson encompasses every single spiritual level, from the most lofty tzaddik and gadol adar to the lowliest Jew in the world. Everyone, it's relevant for everyone and everything. Every circumstance. Min tachlis ksea elyon, from the loftiest, most elevated pinnacle of spiritual growth, at tachlis ksea achron, until the lowest point. Hainu, this means she'im kol Torah v'Torah, that with each and every teaching, the Sichah shaloi, and each and every Sichah, which is this sefer, the greatest tzaddik is able to get some inspiration from that and know how to serve Hashem in a new way. Even the lowest person who's on mamish, the lowest level, out of that very lesson, the tzaddik will take something for his avodah, and the biggest, Russia, the most distant person, will find something relevant for him. Because Rebbe Nachman's teachings are wondrously encompassing and infinitely, inordinately relevant to every single person, of every single background, and at every spiritual level. And here we finish off one more teaching from the next teaching, Sichos HaRan Kuf Lamed Gimel, and now Kuf Lamed Beis, 132. And Rebbe Nachman over here, Reb Nosson is giving the background for another teaching of Likutei Moharan, which is Torah Yud Daled. Likutei Moharan Siman Yud Daled Hamaschelas Tiku, which begins with the words Tiku b'Chodesh Shofar. Lahamshich Shalom, what it means to draw peace down into the world. Says Reb Nosson, a bit of background. Zois HaTorah Amar b'Shabbos Chanukah. This was a Chanukah lesson. Va'az ba'osa eis, and at that time Niftar Rav Chasan before Samarina Rav Gedalia Milinitz Zatzal. Rav Gedalia of Linitz, one of the great Hasidic masters that Reb Nosson, if I'm not mistaken, learned by before coming to Rebbe Nachman of Breslov. Av based in techilas Linitz, he had passed away. V'ramaz ba'osa Torah hesped la Rav Hanal. And Rebbe Nachman coded into that teaching that he was revealing a hesped for Rav Gedalia of Linitz. Ki yizkar az b'seicha teva masham Rav Sinus al ein maspidin b'Chanukah, because he wove into the teaching, this teaching from Chazal, that you don't do a hesped on Chanukah, and that was a reference to the would-be hesped for Rav Gedalia of Linitz, the great tzaddik who had been nifter a short time prior. Gam Amar Az, and Rabbi Nachman also said at that time, She'achshav kashal lemar Torah, that now he said it's very difficult for me to teach Torah. When a tzaddik leaves the world, it's difficult to teach Torah. Because if a tzaddik leaves the world, his chelik of Torah that was active and thereby accessible when he was in the world, like the treasure houses, like we said before, that the tzaddik is bringing down, they go away. Every tzaddik has his own portion in the Torah that is relevant for his soul and that he's revealing into the world in his own unique way. Nistalik, and when the tzaddik leaves the world, in some sense, nistalik im kol chelka sheyesh lebat Torah. That portion of the Torah rises up with him, and in a certain sense, is concealed. Akin kasha az lemar Torah. So we have to understand, when a tzaddik is nifter, when we hear about a tzaddik who leaves the world, we should understand that the Torah, in some sense, is diminished, because they're nostalgic with their whole chelik of Torah. You can imagine if Reb Chaim Kanievsky would have been given another 100 years to live, right? It's just his yard side in Purim. How much Torah more we would have from Reb Chaim. How many more Sfarim, how many more Piskei Halacha, how much more advice, how much more. It's a wild thing. Tzaddik is nifter, and that chelik of Torah is closed up. Al King Kasha Az Lemar Torah. And then we finish off, he said, Mashakaso Shamba is Dalat Amamra Abasenu Zal, and this the Rebbe Nachman quoted the Gemara in Adarim Pei Aleph of an Aleph Mipnei Mount Talmidei Chachamim Ein B'neim Talmidei Chachamim. What is this strange phenomena that really continues in many cases until today, where you don't find that Talmidei Chachamim generally have children that are Talmidei Chachamim, right? That's not a given, even though in some families it is, but in many families it's not necessarily a given. And one of the answers given in the Gemara is Al Shalei Baruchu B'Torah Techilah, because they did not say the bracha on the Torah before learning it, which has many meanings. I've given shiur on that in the past. Shamati Mimanu Zal, he says, I understood from Rabbi Nachman Oid Bazeh, that he said a deeper thing. Which is not what Rebbe Nachman says there. Over there, the tzaddik just sort of quotes this Mamar Chazal. Rebbe Nosson says, while we're talking about Torah Yudalit that quotes this Mamar Chazal, let me tell you another teaching that I heard from Rebbe Nachman on another occasion about this teaching from the Gemara Nidarim. And he says, what I understood from Rebbe Nachman is, Shamati Mimanu Zal Oid Bazeh. I once heard a different teaching from the Rebbe on the matter, that he said, he says the birth of a person's child is going to somehow be impacted by the food that was in the system of the parents. B'shas zivuk. Mysteries. Somehow the eating of the parents is able to have an impact on the spiritual quality of the soul that they're drawing down in their relation. And therefore he says, Adam levarich lekadish es bechinas techilah. That's what's being referenced to ad shaloi. So why weren't their children Talmidei Chachamim? Ad shaloi bercha b'Torah techilah. So Rebbe Nachman is interpreting that they didn't utilize the kedusha of Torah to sanctify the techilah, meaning to sanctify that which comes before the zivug of the parents, which is the way that they're eating. Wild thing, just mystery. Don't understand it. This is some deep mystery. So every person in some sense needs to sanctify the aspect of the techilah, to that which comes before the birth and before the conception of the child. And here he adds another inyan here, and everything else that goes into it. Until they're able to go ahead and to bring about a revelation of a holiness and to bring down a holy soul into the world. And that's the meaning of Al Shaloi Berchu B'Torah Techilah. So it isn't that they didn't Al Shaloi Berchu Kama B'Torah Techilah, that they didn't make the bracha on the Torah before saying the Torah. No, it's deeper. Al Shaloi Berchu B'Torah, that they didn't use the kedusha of the Torah to sanctify their techilah, that which came prior. Shaloi berchu b'kidsha b'kedushas haTorah es hatechilah. They didn't sanctify the eating and their actions and their thoughts and their words and their actions before the act of conception, of bringing a child into the world. To that which comes before the birth. So a person has to sanctify those aspects with Torah, and then the children will also be Talmidei Chachamim. Now this means on a spiritual level, and that's how Rebbe Nachman speaks about it over here, but I think maybe more pragmatically, it could be that sometimes the reason why Talmidei Chachamim's children are not Talmidei Chachamim is if they don't see the way that their Talmud scholar parent, let's say, in some sense, is sanctifying the rest of their life with the holiness of Torah. And sometimes there could be a certain, like they call it rabbi's son syndrome, but that's even in a very holy, healthy way. But certainly, sometimes if it remains a purely academic endeavor, and they don't see, oh, the sun is shining, unbelievable. If they don't see that as a result of the parents' connection to Limud Torah, that's causing them to be berchu techilah, that's causing them to sanctify all of the things that are prior to the actual Torah study, the things that happen outside the Beis Medrash, the things that happen outside the bedroom, right? That happen outside of a moment of yichud with Hashem. But the things that happen before that, how does the person eat? How does the person drink? How does the person talk? How does the person process the news? What does the person talk about? How does it, etc., etc., etc. So then it can become like, I don't know, it's not so real. It doesn't have that much of an impact because we don't see the relevance for life. We only see, the value of the learning when they're learning. They could be big time in the chachamim, but if we don't learn in our learning how to utilize our Torah, that it should be berchu b'Torah techilah, that our connection to Torah is sanctifying our techilah, meaning all the things that come before actually sitting in front of a Gemara, the techilah. So then it could be that chas v'shalom, a person's children will not absorb that kedusha, and it will just be like that's dad's thing. Dad likes learning, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be a talmid chacham or tati. It doesn't mean dad or abba or papa or any other thing. Not chas v'shalom, not making any comment on any community, right? But it means that it's not a holistic thing. But if children see that the parents' learning overflows and it fills their whole life, and they see that it elevates and it sanctifies and there's a relevance, and it makes the father much more relevant and much more down to earth and much more present and much more loving and much more there. So then a person has, I think, a better chance of having that their children should also want to be Talmidei Chachamim, and that's a little bit of a broader interpretation of this part of the Sichah. Okay, that's a mouthful. We covered a lot. And what a privilege to be learning these teachings and still on this journey, 4+ years, I think, or something like that, maybe even 5+ years on this class trip with Rabbeinu HaKadosh. And things just got clearer and clearer and clearer as the world gets foggier and foggier and foggier. This is a big light. Rebbe Nachman is a big, big, big light. And we have to believe in it. And we have to bring it into our own lives and find a way to share it with others. Not that anybody should become Breslov or Hasidish. It's nothing to do with this. That people should have a leiv basar. That people should have a heart that's refined, that's soft, that's sensitive, that's malleable, that's resilient. This is what we want for ourselves and for our children, for all of Klal Yisrael, and for every human being on the planet. Sheniska. Okay, Yidin Yasher Kayach, thank you for joining us. Reb Yitzchak, it's wonderful to see you. And Reb Shimon, it's wonderful to see you. And Paul, and to everybody else, thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Chazak v'yamatz. All the best.
ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני